Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Well, it's been a couple of days since we finished our game. There was me and Rank Carcass. We were playing the Allies, and my good friend Panzer King from Prince George, he was playing the Comintern, and Jinx from Grand Prairie, Alberta, he was playing the Axis. He had to play all the Axis. We'd hope one more person would come along. I think that 5 people would be perfect for this game, because then you could have 2 Axis players, 2 Allies players, and 1 Comintern player. And that way, like if you had more than that, then people would be kind of getting bored, right? If all you got to do is play the Italians, or if all you got to do was play China or Italy, or I mean not Italy, sorry, France, then it might get kind of boring. And this game, if you played France, you probably wouldn't get all that bored. But anyway, I think that 5 people would be just perfect for this game. And less than that, like Jinx was by himself and he had to play all of the Axis. It is kind of overwhelming, and anybody that's played this game and has had to do that, you know exactly what that means, and I know what it means because I've played all of the Axis. And there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to do. A German turn, like one where you're declaring war for the first time and you're doing your double impulse. I mean, that takes so much thought and so much effort and everything. And then you just get done. And then the Russian turn, could be pretty quick. And now all of a sudden you got to think about Japan, right? And then you get through that, and then you get a small reprieve, and then you got to do Italy, and then all of a sudden it's Germany again. And so it's really tough to play by yourself, unless you've got lots of time and nobody's in a hurry, nobody's pushing you to go faster. But we did have a time limit because people came from out of town, and so we had to get this game done in our allotted time, right? And so Jinx, he played a very good game and he beat the crap out of us. But there was things that he could have done better, like he would admit that, like playing with the elite of the Reich. He missed so many opportunities to promote units and things like that because he was so busy with other things. When you play the elite of the Reich, you have to plan ahead, like probably 2-3 turns ahead, because you have to have a unit in place and you have to have the money at the end of your turn to upgrade that unit to, from a normal infantry, say, to an elite infantry. So you have to have that unit in place in a certain territory or a certain group of territories or whatever, or you have to spend or lose a certain amount of money on a turn in order to get units the next turn. So you really have to plan ahead with that one, and it's tough to do when you're playing by yourself. I remember the time that I played the Elite of the Reich in Edmonton at Rank Carcass's house. It was really hard because you're so focused on trying to play the game, and you're focused on doing that. Like by the end of it, you're just a bowl of mush because your brain is overtaxed. But it's a lot of fun though. This game is a lot of fun. It's not for people who just like a light fun game, like where you just roll the dice and everybody just moves around like a basic game of Axis and Allies, not one of the more complicated ones, or a game of Risk. A game of Risk is just short and fun, and this isn't that. Okay. Anyway, we were playing the version 3 rule set for the first time, and none of us had ever played that, obviously. I had a little bit of a chance to look things over, but the rest of the guys, they were coming in cold, right? Like, here's the rules, guys, and they had a very short window of opportunity to look through the rules and everything, and then we had to Forrest Gump our way through it. I think we got some things wrong. We had some people helping us out in the comments, and I was getting messages from a friend of mine in Denmark who helped who helped create the rules. That's Morten in Denmark. So thanks to him for that. But still, I think we got some things wrong. Like one thing, for instance, there's these 3 territories here: Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania. Now they never changed hands because Paris never falls. because Paris never fell in this game, which is weird in itself. But like we were kind of going on what it says here in the rule book. It says Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania will be available for alignment immediately after Paris falls. Germany, in the place units phase of each turn subsequent to the fall of Paris, may align one of these three nations. So that's what we were going on. Was okay. So as soon as he takes Paris, which he never did, then he could start then he would have these three territories, because then USSR would have fallen. But somebody mentioned in the comments, no, that's not how it is. It's either Paris falls or it's when Germany declares war on the Soviet Union, then you automatically align the three. Because then the last sentence says, as soon as Germany declares war on the USSR, the remaining nations automatically align. So it's kind of ambiguous there. Like, does Paris have to fall and then the remaining nations align after you declare war against Russia? Or can you just forget about Paris, like Jenks did, and then the three nations will align as soon as you declare war against Russia, like without Paris falling? I don't know. I'm going to seek some more clarification on that. I think I'm inclined to believe that that they would fall when you declare war on the USSR, but I don't know that for certain. It's just, you could read that two different ways, right? And that's the same with any rule book for any game. You know, like that's why people argue when they're playing games, because they read the rule books and you don't read it the same as the other guy, right? And anyway, so I'm going to try to seek some clarification on that. But the game was a really, really good game, and it was a really interesting game. It's not like any game that I've ever played, that's for sure. For one thing, the competition was high, like some really good players in this game. And I'm pretty new to this game, like I've only been playing it for a year. So I haven't been exposed to that many players before, right? Being able to play with and against them. And so the more players that you get to play for and against, the more you're going to learn about the game, the different kind of styles and things like that. Like playing Axis and Allies, it's easier to find players, and so you get exposed to more different strategies. And there's a lot of those strategies online and everything that are talked about incessantly in the forums or even videos on YouTube, right? Whereas there's not that many about this game, because this game is fairly new, right? It's only a couple of years old now. And as I play this game more, like all I've concentrated on to this point is just making videos about rules, because I mean that's what I'm just learning the rules, right? And so I'm trying to get other people to play the game, and so I'm trying to teach them the rules as I'm learning them myself. But at some point in time, when I get to be a better player, then I'm going to be making strategy videos, and so hopefully other people will be doing that too, and we'll all become better players. Anyway, so yeah, very strange game that Paris never fell here. You can see these guys, the Maginot Lines right here, and the French actually did make it into Germany, but Germany never did make it in to the home country of France. In fact, France only lost, I guess it's 4 territories now. It was only 3. Like they lost this one first, and that wasn't until late in the game. And then they lost these 2 over here. So that's 3. And then they lost these down here too. So there's more than that they've lost now. They've only lost colonies anyway. They didn't lose any of their home territories. Anyway, so that was interesting. And also they managed to take northern Italy here, which was that was the only place that the Italians had a complex, a factory, and the Italians never did get it back. Between the British coming in there and supporting the French, and the French supporting themselves, like continuing to put more units in there, neither the Germans nor the Italians were able to take them out. They weren't even able to try, because we kept one step ahead of them, just as Germany kept one step ahead of us from getting into Berlin, right? And we stopped the game a turn early because we knew that like it was getting into dinner time on Monday night, and we could have played late, but then Jinx would have had to drive home in the middle of the night. And between Prince George and Grand Prairie, there's this mountain pass that goes through the Rockies that's not really driver friendly. I mean, it's both of my kids have been in accidents going through that pass. It's not a pleasant drive, and so we thought, let's just end this game now because nothing major could possibly happen in the next turn. Berlin's not going to fall. The only thing that might have fallen, but we doubted it was Sydney, but really it didn't look like any major changes were going to happen. And like if the game were to go on unlimited, like if there wasn't a time limit in the game, if you weren't working on a calendar like this, if you just played until one side gave up or whatever, then it might have been a different story for the Allies, because the Americans were just starting to make landings. You can see here that they're there, plus they're over here. They've got this 4 transport shot going, so they were able to come here, then they were all able to go there, and then their 4 transports were able to do the one of the new rules, which is where they can move 5 spaces from friendly port to friendly port, non-combat move with 4 units. The Americans can. Like each nation has a different number that they can do. Like Great Britain's was 3. I think Japan was 4. I don't know. Anyway, so the Americans was 4, so they could move their 4 transports back every single time, right? And so they were going to keep bringing units over. Plus, Paris was not going to fall with the Americans in the game now. There was no way that was going to happen. And then the British, there was no way London was going to fall either. There was too much stuff on London. Like here's London right here, where all these planes are. Where that American was there that I showed you, that's right here. So there's Canadians there, there's British there, there's Americans there, and then the French are in the territory right next to them there. Like they're piling their stuff up on the territory next to them, and where the Italians are. So like they would have eventually overcame the Germans, but that probably would have taken 4 or 5 or 6 turns. So there isn't an unlimited amount of time in this game. Anyway, I did have a contest where on the first day of the game, there was 3 days and 3 videos that I put out. I talked about the Dutch East Indies and about the rules regarding them. Before I go on with that though, I need to take a drink, okay? So I'll be right back. Okay, so when I was down in Tulsa a couple months ago, playtesting for this game with 6 other people at Historical Board Gaming at their home base, their warehouse, had a great time down there. One of the things that happened when we were playing this game, we tested a few games, but when we were playing this game, the guy that was playing the Japanese, his name's Delijah. He's from Europe. He's a really good player. He just completely ignored the Chinese. He just he came down here as far as he could with everything he had, and then on the second turn, he took the Dutch East Indies. I think, if not all of them, just about all of them, and then had them all by the next turn. So by 1937, he had all of the Dutch East Indies, and it kind of ruined the game. After that, there was nothing that the Allies could have done in the Pacific, because the Americans are a long, long ways off from going to war. And so now that the Dutch East Indies are gone, the UK doesn't have an opportunity to pick up that income, because in the game, once one Dutch territory is attacked, then they all turn British, right? That's $11 in total. So, like, say if the Netherlands up there gets attacked by the Germans, then all of these nations all of these territories down here would become British, and that's an essential part of the British income in keeping up with this game. And that's important because then the Japanese, like they're right here, they're threatening Sydney over here, and they're threatening Calcutta. That's 2 of the 3 Commonwealth nations that are in this game. And so the rules regarding this was not penalizing enough for the Dutch to do that. I mean, it just kind of breaks the game when you do something that's ahistorical like that. Like, that's not the way things happen, right? There was a war that went on between Japan and China, and that continued through the Second World War. That doesn't mean that you have to follow that script, though. And so you should have the opportunity to change that. I mean, the reason we play these types of games, World War II games or World War I games or whatever, is not to recreate the war, because we know how that ends. You know, like there's an atomic bomb that drops on Hiroshima and another one on Nagasaki, and Hitler shoots himself in a bunker, or so they say. So, you know, we know exactly how the war ends, and there wouldn't be any point in playing the game if that had to be the outcome of the game, and if all the events had to take place just how they did. But at the same time, there was a political situation in place back in the 1930s leading up to the war, and, you know, specifically in the early war years, right, where nations were aligning either one way or the other. And for me, the reason why this would not have taken place the way it did, where he came down there and did that, is more to do with Europe than anything, right? Like, the Netherlands is a European nation, right? And so down here, these are European colonies, like these are Dutch colonies. Now, here's more European colonies. Those are French colonies. Here's another European colony, Hong Kong. Here's another European colony, Australia, and another in here, and more in here, and over here. Like, these are all colonies, and this right here is a European colony. Now, if Japan attacked China, that's kind of like, to the Europeans, that would be couple of Asian nations going at it, and Japan looks like a threat, and we should be heightened awareness about that. You know, we have some colonies in the region, you know, they might spill over, but the hope is that it would stay as a war between two Asian nations, right? It's not the same as Japan being so bold as to attack a European nation and their colonies. Now, if that had happened, there's no darn way in the world that the rest of the European nations and the Americans would have just stood by and let that happen. There's no way in hell in the 1930s that could have possibly happened. I guarantee you. And it's just, that's just the way it is, you know. Like, ask any European or ask any historian. There's no way they would have sat back if this had been attacked instead of China. It would have signaled that, okay, Japan doesn't care, you know, like they don't care. They'll attack anybody's colonies, you know. Like, the Europeans had this feeling like, you know, they were kind of invincible, that nobody would challenge them. And if that happened, well, now they've been challenged, right? Okay, so if they can challenge them there, then they can challenge them here, then they can challenge them here. Like, there would have been an awareness, and an immediate awareness, that they were willing to go after Europe. Now, America, being, you know, not really a colony of Europe, but was colonized by Europe, would have that same feeling. America would not have sat back as long as they did if the Japanese had attacked a European nation back then, and not the Chinese. I mean, the Americans still had a bit of a heightened awareness when China was attacked, because America supported China. But it's not the same as attacking a European colony. It just isn't. And so I love the way they in this game, they've ramped up to war. They've found an excellent game mechanic, in that, you know, you roll the dice and you get closer and closer to war. All of the Allied nations do that. French do it, the Commonwealth do it, and the Americans do it. And that's awesome. And the way they do it is by things that happen in the game. And the more egregious those things, the more income those nations get, And then when each of them reaches a certain income threshold, like the Americans is 63, for instance, the British are 24. Well, when they reach that income level, then they have the ability to declare war on the Axis if they so choose, and they would probably. By the time they reach that, then they would probably be at war with either Germany or Japan or or whatever, right? But so my concern is that it's not weighted properly. That what Delisle did that day was exposed a weakness in the game, in that okay, the it needs to be adjusted. The game mechanics don't need to be adjusted. They're awesome, but what needs to be adjusted is the numbers, because there's got to be a penalty for them doing that. Right now, there's not enough of a penalty. The penalty that exists right now is that the ANZAC goes up $2. India goes up $2, or the FEC, and America goes up by 2d12. So they roll two dice, and you add that to their income. Now that could come out to be 2. It could come out to be 24. You don't know, right? Chances are it'll come out somewhere around 12, like that would be average, right? And that still puts them a long, long, long ways in 1937 from being at war and from being able to do anything. And the big dynamic on this whole side of the board, the Pacific, is when do the Americans enter the war? And the way to play this game, if you're the Axis, is that you keep the Americans out of the war as long as possible. You don't go and attack Pearl Harbor in 1941. You do everything you can. You don't buy any capital ships. You don't attack Mongolia. You do everything you can to keep the Americans out of the war as long as possible, and you become as large as you possibly can with a huge income. And then when the Americans are about to enter the war, that's when you use your surprise strike, and you can either attack the Americans or attack the British or attack ANZAC. That's the best chance that the Japanese have to helping the Axis win this war, right? And so that's why this is so important. With the Japanese being able to take all of this money and be in this spot here that can challenge all of these places over here, then that changes the game, and it changes it. Well, the Americans don't have a chance to stop it. It kind of breaks the game. It gives Japan way too much of an advantage. So the question that I asked and I offered a prize is, what would you do? How would you fix that in the game so that Japan still can do that if they want to, but that they will pay a price for it, a price that's greater than these guys collect 2, these guys collect 2, and the Americans get 2 dice, because that's just not enough of a deterrent. The benefit that Japan gets out of doing that is much greater, right, than those penalties. So I asked you guys to give up suggestions, and that we would pick some. And the one that is picked is by Mark Anderson. I think he's from Oklahoma, if I remember correctly. I think I sent him a prize like over a year ago. Anyway, his answer is Japan loses the 3 income from the U.S. The U.S. gives Japan, not literally, they take it from the bank, not from the Americans, but they get $3 extra every turn, like a peacetime bonus income, for not attacking China. So they would lose that. They would lose that $3. The U.S. income goes up by 6 immediately, or is that 5? I wrote it down. I can't read my own writing. It's either 5 or 6 anyway. The ANZAC and FEC go up by 2 each. Okay, so that's pretty much what already, well, not quite what already happens. But here's what I like about what he wrote, is the U.S. begins rolling a D12 per turn, regardless of what turn you're on. So if they attack these guys on the second turn, then the Americans start rolling their D12. They don't wait till 1939 to start doing that. They start doing it right then. And that's kind of perfect, because Um, if the Japanese waited until about the time they should be attacking the Dutch East Indies, that's about the time that America would start rolling that D12 anyway. So sure, go ahead and attack these guys. The Americans aren't going to get 2 D12 right away. They're only going to get, it's either 5 or 6 immediately, just straight dollars, not dice. And then they start rolling their D12. And the Americans are going to be at war probably by 1940, 41. So that they will be entering the war either early or on time. So go ahead and attack the Dutch East Indies, but you're going to pay the price later in the game, because then the Americans will their income is going to start increasing and increasing. Like if you don't do that, if you just leave the Americans alone and you don't do anything to increase their income is only $6. And like you can keep them at 6 or 8 or under $10 anyway. You can keep them under $10 until 1939, 1940. It's easy to do that, right? And so the Americans, it's not just that they're not at war, it's they can do nothing, you know. they can start a battleship and then move it to the next spot. And that's the only thing they can do on their turn is to do something very little like that. So if they start rolling D12s on turn 2 or turn 3, when Japan decides to attack the Netherlands East Indies, well, that kind of balances the game back again. So that's a great suggestion by Mark. Now, some people were suggesting that, okay, well, if that's the case, then Britain should get to declare war on Japan, even though they're not at wartime income. And that's not going to help. That's not going to help at all, because one of the things that helps get the Americans into the war is that if Japan declares war on Great Britain or on the Commonwealth, like if they were to attack Australia, or if they were to attack India, then the Americans get 5D12. So, you know, you're looking at around $30 or more income jump for the U.S., and they're already at you know, maybe they're at 15 already. So they're getting close to war, and they need that, right? That's what you need. You need the Americans to get into this game. So you can't declare war on Japan. There's no way that the British can declare war on Japan, because they're losing that 5D12 if they do that. And they're going to lose if they do that. Like if the rule is that the Americans the Japanese get to attack this on the second turn, and the only thing that happens is that the British can declare war. Well, first of all, the British have nothing down here. You know what I mean? Like their income is low, even though their income bumps up just slightly, according to what you guys suggested. Still, like they're not ready to go to war with an income of 11 or 12, and with the income of 7 over here, and a similar income over here. Like there's no way that they can take on the Japanese that way. And then when they do that, then the Japanese can keep the Americans out of the war, and just tee off on the British. Like that would be the biggest mistake the British ever made, if Japan took this out and then the British attacked Japan. Because then, okay, Japan goes, sweet, now we can take over India, and now we can take over Australia. And by the time we do that, then the Americans are still not at war. So that's not an option, just being able to declare war on them. But I like Mark's suggestion where the Americans get the D12. The only thing that what I was just talking about there is that, okay, so the British can declare war on them, but that doesn't negate the D12. Like that would be a good thing too, but the Americans would get that pretty much right away then, because if the British attack the Japanese right away and the Japanese attack them back, well then the Americans would get 5D12. So that doesn't really work either, although that's better than what exists right now. But anyway, I like that one. I like Mark's suggestion. So anyway, this is what you won, Mark. This I got from Historical Board Gaming. They've got lots of custom infantry now, and they're good quality ones too. Like, I can tell you from experience that not all custom infantry are built the same. Some of them are just absolute crap. Like, you can't put any paint on them, and you got to paint them, because if you don't, then like this is the color of your FEC if you don't, right? So this would be FEC infantry, and as you can see, they're East Indian infantry. Now, if you want, Mark, I can paint these in the British colors. Like here, I'll show you. I've got one here. So I've got a paint that matches the British really well, right? The tan. I can paint them for you before I send them off if you want. Or I can just send them like this, and you can paint them yourself. It's up to you. You can let me know. The other thing you get is I'm going to send you 3 Gurkhas. Gurkhas are a new thing in version 3. They're like jungle warriors. Well, they're actually more like mountain infantry that are also jungle warriors, because they work like mountain infantry. They get that +1 on defense, and they don't suffer the mountain penalty on offense. And then in the jungles here, like you can see, these guys are in jungle right now. They get first strike. Japanese infantry, Marines, and FEC Gurkhas get first strike in the jungle. So these are actual Gurkha sculpts as well. You can see, and like you can see, it's tan on the bottom. So I painted these guys probably 2 years ago or something like that for my game, and then I painted the base green because these used to be my FEC sculpts. But now that we need Gurkhas, I decided, okay, I'll just paint the bases green, and from Historical Board Gaming, I'll get some of these guys, and these guys may be my new FEC, right? The East Indian ones. So there's that, and then there's one more thing, and that is I ordered a bunch of these off of Amazon. It's a 16-sided dice, and the reason I'm giving that to you is so you have the option of playing with my house rule. You can see now that there are 16 weapons on the board. They go like I got this thing before the last one was put on there, so I'll get a new one when it's made up. The 16th one is attack transports. What I do at the start of the game is that all the major nations roll the dice, and they get a weapon. So you just go in order, like Germany goes first, right? So you roll the dice, and it comes up to be a 4. Germany gets jet aircraft. And then, okay, it's Russia's turn. So Russia rolls the dice. 10, Russia gets radar. So that's all you do. And then you don't get to use the weapons until 1939, because that's when weapons development comes into the game, is 1939. I don't think you should be able to use the weapons in 1936. It's kind of early for that. It's just, it kind of kickstarts the game. Excuse me, it kind of kickstarts all the weapons development. Like you can see how much weapons are over there with all the that are finished, with all the discs that are on there. That's partly because of this house rule, and partly because in the new version of the game, you can research weapons right from the start of the game up to stage 2, and then when 1939 comes along, then you can start going for stage 3 and stage 4. So anyway, congratulations, Mark. I don't know, I can't tell you that your suggestion is going to be adopted or anything. I'm going to put it forward to my friends at Historical Board Gaming, though, and say, hey, this is a pretty good suggestion. Don't know if they'll do that or not. They might be totally happy with what they have right now. But even if they don't, who knows? I might house roll that in to my game. Although I got to tell you, you see the Netherlands here has not been attacked. Like this Japanese guy here, this is a British territory or an FEC territory over here. It was a really cool strategy by Jinx. He didn't take these, and he didn't take this one up here, and he didn't take, like, taking Belgium was actually a mistake. Like, this is where Belgium is, where this American marker is. Before that, we couldn't take these places. So, like, we could, but it was going to cost us $10 to do it, and the Americans were going to go down $8. So that's an $18 penalty to attack those either of those two places there. That kept the British off of the Germans back, the only place they could attack was right here, right? So that kept them off there, and it kept this money out of the British hands. Like there's not a certain date that this money goes to the British, right? It's just that the Netherlands gets attacked. So what they did is effectively, right throughout the entire game, is the opposite of what Delija did. Jinx kept the Netherlands out of the game, and so the British didn't get the money for them. The same as what Delija did, the British didn't get the money for him, except for he didn't attack them. It actually worked out pretty good. So anyway, that's the prize there. Congratulations, Mark. So that's all I got for you today. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.